Well, hi, Paradigm Shifters. It must be Transformation Tuesday, right? Well, welcome to Transformation Tuesday for, January 24, 2023. Let's take a deep breath in here for, to get centered right here where we are, where we know right here where we are, there is life. And, yeah, you could turn your video back on, Diane. You're good. You were good there a little bit more.
I thought it was on.
Oh, now it's off, but now just hit it one more time and you're good. And turn on your turn on your mic. There's the mic's on now. Just hit the video part and you'll be fine. There you are. Now just leave it like that. Put your hands like this, Diane. Put it up here. Do not touch anywhere.
Yay! This is tricky.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. So we learn which buttons to push and which not. So with Paradigm Shifters, we are a dedicated community. We're dedicated to shift and uplift the planet. How's that? And every month we bring in a new topic and guest speakers on topics. And January 2023 it's all about living a peace-filled life.
Mm.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. And so for today, we have as our guest speaker and presenter, Dianne Slade, who, boy, I met you, I don't know how many years ago, but your story at this women's retreat just rocked my boat when your book was coming out. And I just had to know more because you are one of the most peaceful women I know. And the story. So let me bring in a little bit of your bio that you told me. I'm going to tell a little bit of it and I want you to take over the rest. But Dianne, how's that? Good? Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so Dianne, she was I'm going to put this in quote, an army brat. Post World War II. So it's hard to believe looking at Dianne, but all right. She spent time in her formative years from 5 to 10 years old in Japan, where her dad was a liaison officer with the Japanese government. And she says that she moved so many times that she never put her roots down or kept long-term friendships during her before adulthood. And you said that stability was the goal for you and your children. And I think you said, I haven't moved from the San Antonio area since graduating from college. And I intended to provide a safe, secure, and loving nest for your kids.
True.
Yeah. And then you talk about you had a daughter and 2 years later a son, Brian, and that they were opposite. And I want to turn this over to you now and tell us a little bit about your story and that led up to your book. So here you go.
Okay. Well, my daughter was what anyone would consider an easy child. She was what I expected my children to be. And here's an interesting little factoid. At one point, I went to an astrologer. Okay, now I know this is a bit weird, but just out of the blue, she said, and you have 2 children, and they're very, very different from each other. That is because they were born on opposite something or another having to do with astrology. But they were both born on the second Monday of the year, one at 10 something at night, one at 10 something in the morning. And so their birthdays almost coincide, but they're on the second Monday of May in 2 years apart. So I thought that was and she said, one is a light child and one is a dark child, and will have more difficulty navigating through life. Well, I thought that was kind of strange. And I definitely meant for that not to color my behaviors with the kids, even though they were pretty little at that time. Things were obviously different between the two of them. Brian was extremely, extremely active, and I guess the word would be oppositional from the word go, from the time he was very small. When he experienced success in almost anything, in school, in athletics, and he was gifted athletically, just fabulous. Fastest kid in Northeast in the 5th grade. He was just amazing. He would find a way to what we call shoot himself in the foot and make sure that success did not continue, no matter what it was, be it friendships or school or, as I said, athletics. We began seeking help for him and for the family when he was about 6. It was very, very difficult, in fact, impossible to get a diagnosis because he would not cooperate with the therapist. Literally run out of the room and hide underneath the car. Anything to get away and not face what he was being asked to do. He outlasted many counselors, everyone we knew in San Antonio, and he continued to downward spiral throughout high school, left high school. By the time he was 25, we were realizing how completely either dependent or addicted he was to, we assumed alcohol, probably pot, but didn't know how severe cocaine and crack became for him until much, much later. We gave it our best efforts, and many times he did too. He really, really tried, as you can tell from some of his poetry. He worked really hard at it. He, however, ended up spending his last years on the streets of Houston, living behind a car wash, between a car wash and a fence. This is the picture of the cover of the book. This is actually the place where he lived. It was a little spot about 3 feet wide, and it was covered in cardboard, some of his clothing items, Coke bottles. And he said it was on purpose so that if anybody actually looked back there, they wouldn't think there was anything to find. Of course, this was hard during the rains in Houston. So there's something called a mega bus where you can get a very inexpensive ticket on the bus between Houston and here. And he came to stay with us, my husband, Chip, and me, many times. And he would stay as long as he could. Sometimes it was 2 days, sometimes it was a couple of weeks. But because of, I give Chip a great deal of credit, his ability to connect with Brian, it was able to heal our relationship a good deal toward the end of his life, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing for me and for Brian, I believe. It was just a very difficult time. I wish I could take you outside, because one of the things that he did in our yard was to build rock walkways through the front. And I put up a pair of wings over one of the little walks and I will always think of him when I'm doing the little walks through the woods in our front yard. He finally lost his life in 2016. It was in a drug transaction. And it was devastating, even though from the time he was fairly young, my fear was that he would end up in prison or dead from his addictions. And it turned out to be a true thing. it was hard to realize that this was actually coming true at the very end. The thing about his poems, and he sent them to me periodically, or when he would come to visit, he would bring a little envelope full of them. I wish I had all of them, but most were lost to fortune, weather, just being left behind. But if you read a few of them or hear a few of them, you'll realize he had a language gift and a heart gift that was completely unexpected until after his death. I started working on these, putting his poems together as, I guess you would say, as sort of a therapy for me. And because it was important to him, he had always wanted this to happen, but couldn't make it happen on his own. And some of them are so poignant and so obviously, he was so obviously aware of what was happening to him and yet could not control it. He could not keep a lid on it. Part of it was, I think, going back to the same situation. At the very end, we counted, his dad and I, and believe he was up to 15 rehabs that we had attempted, that he would stay for sometimes a couple of weeks. I think 1 or 2 he completed, actually. Most for a few days, and then he just was compelled to leave. We couldn't help it. I wish I had a video of his 21st birthday, which he spent in a rehab in San Antonio, and we all went, had a birthday cake at the whole thing, and he wrote a song and played on the guitar called "Turning 21 in Rehab, and My Life's Gonna Be Better," or some such. But he had an amazing sense of humor. That was to be funny. He meant that as a big joke, even though it turned out to be a true thing. Most of his poems were written during periods of rehab, some of them during periods when he was in jail. At one point, after having been arrested for something I wish I could remember what, most likely a burglary sort of thing, we left him there. Didn't bail him out, left him there for the full term, which was either 30 days or 6 weeks, but it was very long for both of us. At the time, I worked downtown fairly close to the Bexar County Jail, which I've just heard has been raised, which is a wonderful thing. And let me tell you that visiting someone in jail is nothing like it is portrayed on TV. It is gritty, it is dirty, feels rather hopeless. It was something that we, his family, and I hoped would be a turning point for him. And several of his poems indicate that, yeah, he hoped the same thing. He wanted things to be different from now on. He felt like he'd paid his dues and that he could beat this thing, but it simply wasn't to be. There was one time when he was living with my husband and me out here. He couldn't stay with anyone else in the family, incidentally, because they lived in town in San Antonio, and it was way too easy for him to escape to find drugs, find his old buddies and so forth. But out here, he was isolated and was pretty much forced to stay here. So we paid him for the work he did. He got enough money to buy half of a car. We bought the other half for him, so he had transportation. He got the ability to have an apartment. His father co-signed for an apartment for him and gave him a job. So he had everything going for him. And that lasted about a month until he had to be fired because he simply couldn't do it. So I'm sure any of you who've had experience with with loved ones, relatives who've got an addiction problem, understand this. It's can be stronger than they are, no matter how much they want to be brought back into the fold, so to speak. It just can't happen, or can't happen for some people. Here's hoping it does for many others. But that was his hope, and that was his purpose in writing the poems that he did. There's one that I would love to read to you that was actually, it was, let me see if I can get this to come up. It's on YouTube, and a friend of ours who does voiceovers recorded it, and it's on YouTube. It's called The Hitcher. And at the trial of the man who was Brian's, I want to use the word murderer, but I don't believe he ever had murder in his heart. I think this was, I don't know. But at the trial, we were able to play this video, and there were a number of other inmates who were coming up for trial in front of the judge at the same time. Every one of them had tears in their eyes at the end of this. I'd like to play this for you. Can you hear it?
Sitting on the side of the road in the edge of sanity for what seems an eternity. He waits for his ride out of this hell and into the next. His faded green duffel bag and his life are the same, both full of emptiness. And time stands still as his mind travels back to the years before he met despair and his sidekick sorrow. A tiny spark of peace and love flicker in his heart and momentarily confuse him. The sound of 18 wheels snaps him back to his one reality, that he is lost and alone in a world full of people. Glancing up from his boots, his heart skips a beat as he sees his ride to the next town of troubles, waiting impatiently. And for a split second, he feels alive again at the remote possibility of good fortune, only to be slapped back down by the cold, hard hand of life at the next stop. This man travels everywhere, yet he goes nowhere. For he is the hitcher.
Beautiful, beautiful.
He had a gift.
So he actually is helping those on this side. That I wanted to ask you about two questions. What you've learned about yourself, Dianne, in the process, and the strength that you've had. What have you learned about yourself as a mom in the process? And what was it like to get the idea to have his legacy live on?
That is a very, I won't say a difficult question for me to answer. What have I learned as a mom? But it's a very painful one. It's very, very hard for me to say how much failure I feel by not being able to fix him, because that's what moms are supposed to do. And I couldn't, no matter what we tried, I could not do it. So that is very painful to live with. But on the positive side, I think I have learned to let people be, much more so than to try to mold them into what I want or what I think they're supposed to be. I think that's been my biggest lesson, that we're not all going to come out of this life the same. We're not all going to learn the same lessons. And he had his own lessons to learn. And I believe that he did. The poem that I find most poignant was the one named Cocaine, the Devil's Tool, because it shows me that he knew what was happening to him. He knew it, and he couldn't do anything about it. Do you think that would be worth reading now, or should we wait?
I'll tell you what we could do is we could put it up on the Facebook page to have people read it on the page, and also where we can get a copy of the book. So tell me what the book is doing now. When was that published? And what is that book doing now? Where is it? And what's your hope for it?
Okay. I finished it in 2017. It's published through Amazon. So it's available, Poet in the Alley. It's available on Amazon. It has numbers of copies, several hundred copies have gone to various rehabs. And I've gotten lots of feedback from both counselors and some of the people who are in rehabs themselves, saying how important these poems were to them, because as you can tell, they're not long. They're rather pithy. He tells it like it is and pulls no punches about how he sees life. Most of them, believe it or not, are very positive and have a very positive outlook.
So if you could tell me, like, what are some of the responses from the people in rehab? That's what, because that's like right there is a tool, right there is a gift and a tool. And that I'm going to say, yes, it was Brian, but you had the courage to go and just do it and continue to do it. So tell me some of the responses of the people in rehab.
Oh gosh, it's been mostly people identifying with Brian's thoughts, with his thought patterns, with things like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel. He put into words what was going through my mind when I had when I left rehab and couldn't finish, when I finished rehab and thought, great, I've got a life in front of me. And here's hoping that many of them actually have kicked this. And I don't know, of course, I can't keep up with everything, wish I could. Right now, it is being evaluated by a couple of hospitals and schools in the Houston area, because this was written. They're all mostly written in the Houston area. But I have high hopes for them being picked up and used. And I've sent maybe, oh gosh, maybe another 100 copies out in the last month or two to I wish I could remember the name of the school is escaping me right now, but it's a school for at-risk kids, of course, and rehab that's associated with this school. I can't remember the name of it right now, but that's my hope, that this will be of value to someone.
Well, I just want to congratulate you and say, well done, good mom. Well done, good mom. It's like you here's one thing I see. You did not let yourself, maybe you did, who knows? I don't really know. But in the process, you found a way to help yourself
Yeah.
and others. What a gift. Now I have like one question more. Let's see. And this is about you, Diane.
Uh-oh.
Oh no. It's like, what would you, Diane, love to be known for?
Oh my gosh. There is only one word here. And that is love. I know that sounds a little hackneyed probably, but I had an interesting experience last weekend. Two of my grandkids came out. One of them is working as an editor in New York, and the other one is in high school. Came out to stay with me about 2 weekends ago, and wanted to interview me as a regular interview. And that was her last question. What's the most important thing in the world? And I thought, okay, so here I am talking to a 22-year-old New York kid. What is the most important thing in the world? It's love. And their eyes just shone. It made me feel so wonderful that I feel like they got it. They got it. That's the thing.
Oh, and you know,
That's it.
you so exemplify that to so many people, everybody that just hears you, and you're calm, and it's a peacefulness. So I want to ask you one more thing. One more thing is what we do at Paradigm Shifters, right? And we are a community. We are growing stronger. We're over 1,500 members here. I didn't know if you knew that. So your message is going out globally, all over the world. And so what would you love, like, what we like to do is to ask you, what would you love? What would you love? And then we're going to put some energy and shoot you some energy over
Okay.
here in San Antonio. What would you love? Anything else?
Well, I guess in terms what I'm thinking right now, because we've been talking about this, I would love for Poet in the Alley to take off and be of help to other people, to anyone, to those who are experiencing addiction, to those who are dealing with loved ones. I would love for this book to be of help, for Brian's thoughts to be of help, because he was a genius at putting his thoughts into words. It put not his thoughts, his feelings. This is heart, not head. That's what I would love.
All right, so here you go. Get some energy going.
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna send it to you. You get to receive it. Okay, get to receive it. Ready?
I'm ready.
All right, there you go. The book, Poet in the Alley, globally. Whoop. Here you go. Whoosh. Got it? Did you catch it?
I got it.
Thank you so much for who you are, where you've been, what you've come through, and also like the many people's lives that your whole family is touching right now.
That's my wish.
Amen. Thank you.